Can we perhaps start, Fred, with you, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background and what your perspective is here today?
Okay, good morning, everyone. And first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to be here, and Lisa as well for hosting and moderating our session. My name's Fred Werner, so I work from the United Nations, the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union. And before I begin, I wanted to share something that came across my screen last night. So if you look at the screen, and I want you to take a moment just to have a look at the screen and try and imagine what's going on there, right? So take a few seconds, look at the photo, look at the video. Now look at the next screen, same thing, there's a photo, a video, what's going on? I don't know, but you'll find out soon. And here again, you have a photo and a video. So what exactly is this? Is this, some new secret government agency? Is it the trailer for Mission Impossible? No, it's actually an art project called The Watcher. And basically what this artist did is he recorded 10 days of open camera feeds, and these feeds are everywhere. You probably have them in Cannes, on the beach, on most town squares, airports, and they're publicly available. So you just record 10 days of video. Then he went to Instagram and basically scraped all the publicly available photographs and profiles which had the same geotag location as the camera feed. And then basically he used AI to create a match. So now you can see exactly what was happening before that person took his glorious Instagram selfie. So why am I sharing this for you? When we created AI for Good 5 years ago, this was pretty much the domain of big tech and government. I mean, this was not readily available. But now this is something you can do in your bedroom. And you've seen with the advent of ChatGPT and DALL-E and all these tools, I think it's safe to say that AI has become mainstream, especially in the last few weeks. Now, is this good? Is this bad? Is this ugly? It really depends, right? So if you're a detective trying to solve a missing persons case, it might be quite handy to know who that football fan was hanging out with before he disappeared. If you're a jealous lover looking for your partner, what he or she was doing on the weekend, yeah, you're getting into a gray zone very quickly. And even worse, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could be wrongly accused for a crime or whatever. So I think it's not hard to imagine how this could be used and abused. Having said that, technology, it's basically what you do with it, right? So it's what do you optimize for? What goals do you set? What rules do you set? And that defines if something is going to be good or bad. The technology itself is neutral. And that's precisely why ITU created AI for Good 5 years ago. So for those of you that don't know the ITU is the United Nations Specialized Agency for Information and Communication Technologies, and we do three things. We basically allocate and harmonize radio spectrum and satellite orbits. We develop international standards that underpin modern telecommunication networks, and we help developing countries bring up their ICT infrastructure through capacity building, trainings, and so forth. But we're also the organizers of AI for Good, alongside 40 other UN agencies and co-convened with Switzerland. So AI for Good was created on the premise that we have less than 10 years to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and AI holds great promise to advance many of those goals and targets, anything from climate change, affordable healthcare, education, gender equity, and more high-tech solutions like autonomous driving and smart cities. The potential is definitely there. And I think the chairman of Siemens, who was at the 2019 summit, said it best when he said, basically, it's a pity that the lion's share of AI talent is basically being used to figure out your online preferences so they can sell you more garbage, basically. And they should be working on solving global challenges. So how do we know what challenges to work on? Different people, different countries, different cultures have different priorities. What's good for you might not be good for me. And how do we basically decide what is good? I mean, we could spend all week, I think, in this room as a group trying to decide what's good and probably not come up with a good answer. So where do we begin? Luckily, we don't have to start from scratch. So we have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to guide us. So, 17 goals, 169 targets agreed upon by 193 countries to basically help us to imagine a world with more quality and sustainability of life on Earth. And so how exactly does AI advance the SDGs? Well, a recent mapping in the scientific journal Nature Communications showed that basically 134 targets could be positively impacted by the SDGs. However, we must be vigilant because about 59 targets could be negatively impacted by SDGs. But still, there's far more use cases than negative use cases, at least as relates to AI for good, which is probably the good news. So what is AI for good? Simply put, the goal of AI for good is to identify practical applications of AI to advance the Sustainable Development Goals and figure out how to scale those solutions for global impact. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, we can't do that alone. So we have 40 UN partners as part of AI for Good. So that's virtually the entire UN system behind AI for Good, contributing with speakers, with knowledge, with data, with expertise, but also there to learn and interact with the community. And the AI experts themselves would say that AI is too important to leave to the experts themselves. So great efforts have been made to bring as many people to the table as possible, whether it's member states, industry, academia, UN, but also the artists, creatives, engineers, astronauts, what have you. And actually on stage today we have an inventor, an artist, a musician, media person. We have a pioneer in autonomous driving. And we have, I believe, the first PhD in AI and machine learning from the UAE. So this is a perfect example of AI for good in action. And I think I'll stop there because I want to pass the word on to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
So we could probably queue up the next video, which I believe is Aljay's video.
I believe that was your video, correct,
Yeah,
Bryn?
that is correct, yeah. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Bryn Balcombe. I'm an autonomy systems and regulatory expert working at Oxbotica, working on autonomous vehicles. And as you saw in that example, we have an approach to what we call universal autonomy. So we don't just focus on one specific use case, like robo-taxis. We actually focus in lots of different domains. So we're working on-road and off-road, in mining, in solar farms, in wind farms, petrochemical plants, as well as working on road in last mile delivery logistics and people movement with shuttles. And the main aim that we're seeing and the main change that we see is how AI, particularly AI when it's embodied in a vehicle, can change society and work particularly towards the goal 3.6, which is reducing road fatalities by 50% by 2030. And 11.2, which is looking at safe, affordable, accessible mobility, and that's for cities. So that's the background for the company. Previously, I worked at a company called RoboRace, which was the world's first autonomous motorsport championship. We hold the world record for the fastest autonomous car. It was about 180 miles an hour that we operated at. And prior to that, I was working in Formula One, developing communication systems. Working around the world doing every single Formula One race. So I'm looking forward to a wide-ranging discussion on the panel, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here today.
Thank you, Bryn. If we can play the next video, please.
They are few, but if you know where to look, you will realize that they are all around us. You can sense their presence. You can feel their energy. The brightest minds shine like brilliant stars, full of intensity and potential. Now, just imagine what they could do together. We are TII, the Technology Innovation Institute, a magnet for pioneering scientists and engineers coming to Abu Dhabi from all corners of the globe, solving some of society's greatest challenges to create a new era of enlightenment. Discover more at TII.ae. Technology Innovation Institute, innovation for a better world. They are few, but if you know...
Well, good morning, everyone. This is me. Okay, so I am Ebtesam Almazrouei, working as a director of Artificial Intelligence Cross-Center Unit in Technology Innovation Institute. And the main thing that maybe you noticed in the video that we are working for a better tomorrow, better future. And the main focus for this panel is how we can embed the AI technologies for humanity, for sustainability, how we can go along with SDG for a better future, not only for us, but for the future generation.
Thank you so much. And the last video, please.
Hello, it's me. So, in the last few weeks, I've performed to a drone in the sea off the Welsh coast. I have to talk over bits of this. I kind of designed it so that I can talk over it because I'm at the top of I'm at the top of one of the UK's tallest thrill rides, and here I am learning to rap with the help of a mind-reading headset.
Suggesting, investing, and protesting.
So I've built installations that explore the interactions between humans, creativity, and technology. Some of my inventions have made the national and international press, and I was honoured to talk at the AI for Good Summit on the links between creativity and technology and what we can learn from it. And I was inspired by so many people at the AI for Good Summit that I started to incorporate AI and machine learning into my own projects. There I am, alongside some AI-generated background singers. That was my entry to the AI version of the Eurovision Song Contest. And then I also stayed up all night making the Beatles sing Call Me Maybe. I had to supervise this model every 4 to 5 seconds overnight to get that to work. And I'm currently filming a web series on amazing applications of AI. So if you want to be involved, then come say hi.
Thank you, and that will wrap our introductions for this panel. Please give a warm welcome to our panelists. Wide range of expertise and value that are adding to humanity. So I would like to start off with a broad question that you can take in the direction that you feel fit, which is, how do you define AI for good from the seat of leadership that you are in?
It's one of the questions I always ask Fred, because I'm always interested in where's the AI for evil conference? It's like, where's that happening?
Silicon Valley.
Because it's just, I'll let you speak, Fred, but that always makes me laugh. Like AI for good. Obviously, we want to use AI for good. But there are applications that are considered to be evil. And I think with that, they're the things that we're, as a society, trying to avoid, at least some of us.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And if you look at things like cybersecurity or misinformation, you know, AI is both a tool and a weapon. So you always have both sides of a coin to consider. But I think I would describe AI for good, at least in the context of AI for good, you know, starting with the SDGs, right? So that's sort of our lighthouse, our guiding principles. If there's an application that can help move the needle on any of the targets between now and 2030, that probably serves as a pre-qualification of good. But going beyond that, I mean, one thing we've seen at AI for Good is there's no shortage of useful AI-powered apps and solutions and tools and robotics that come across our desk every day, which is really inspiring. But how do we know these apps work equally well on men or women, or on children or adults, or people of different skin colors, or even in low resource settings where things like lighting, electricity, running water are basic necessities? So these are things that don't necessarily occur naturally to the fast-moving tech and startup industry. I mean, if you're, you know, raising capital in Silicon Valley or in Shenzhen, you know, it's probably more of an afterthought, like, oh, we got to fix this. But it is something that people think deeply about in AI for Good. So really starting at the base level as, you know, is this data set inclusive? Does it serve everyone? Is it beneficial? And, you know, I think if you could go back in time to maybe the late 90s when, you know, the internet was being invented, if we would have asked a lot of those questions back then, maybe the internet would be a better place today. So I like to think that, yeah, really asking those difficult questions at the beginning when designing applications is AI for good. But also there's a sense of urgency with the community. I mean, we're 2023 now, so that's 7 years until 2030, where we're supposed to make some kind of progress on the SDGs. And if you look at these applications which have high potential, they might take 2-3 years to develop, 2-3 years to scale, and then you only have 2-3 years to see any kind of measurable impact or any kind of moving of the needle. So that there is that sense of urgency as well, where yes, it's important to talk about bias and ethics and privacy and safety. These are like cross-cutting conversations. But the focus of AI for Good is really on practical applications that exist now, that you can use now, that you can implement, because time is running out. So that's very much the focus. So the SDG angle, does it help one of the targets? Is it inclusive by nature? And also, is it something we can use now and not in 30 years?
Thank you, Fred. That's really eye-opening. And I would love to hear from you, Doctor. How do you measure success in this area? How do you know that you're doing something meaningful in AI for good, especially across the broad amount of SDKs that you are working on in actual model development?
So first of all, when I initiated the AI cross-center unit, so there were 5 main programs. Of course, fundamental AI theory and algorithm, computational system, and vision detection, and data-driven technology. And all of them, they are 4 main programs operational, but the 5th program is AI for good. And what I meant by this, I don't have employee in that program, but I am ensuring and putting that all of the projects that we develop should be considering ethical AI, privacy, how we can use this technology for better energy consumption, how we can build this technology for better trust, for better life, how we can implement technology not only for security or defense. No, we are focusing on healthcare, education system, how we can use it to embrace our life for a better humanity. For example, we developed Noor, the largest NLP model in the world, and currently we are developing our own large language model which outperforms GPT-3, which is GPT-3 is for chat. Maybe you heard about ChatGPT, which based on GPT-3, so we are currently developing this. But at the same time, while we're developing these large language model, we are considering the energy consumption. So we also released the study of the energy consumption for these models. What is the carbon footprint? That when you use this technology, when you serve these models, how it will impact your life, how you can utilize it in education, how you can utilize it in healthcare. For example, you can use generative AI models for better diagnosis in the healthcare system.
I've seen that in action, and it's amazing the transformative experiences you can have for humans when you can come with better information for the front lines. LJ, I would love to hear your perspective as a creative. How do you define AI for good and whether we're successful in pursuing that?
Well, I think one of the things that happens is people hear AI and it's just panic stations. It's, the machines are going to take over the world. But even with Google's ML, their new music generating algorithm, it sounds, okay. I think that creative people can use AI as a tool, as a collaborator, and together we can inspire better and maybe even democratize composition. The most beautiful symphony in the world could be in the head of one of you, and you might not be a musician. So how do you get the music out of your head and into the wider world? Well, with AI, you could perhaps sit down and say, I want a piece of music that sounds like the clouds have just rained down and the rainbow is coming through, and you could turn these words, these thoughts into a beautiful symphony. But that's the sort of thing that could then be applied to other things outside of creativity. Some of the best inventions have come from play. And I think seeing AI as a collaborator and a tool as opposed to the end of creativity is a good start.
I think that's a very interesting perspective, and I double down with you that AI is going to be that creative partner. It's that co-creation that's really special when humans and technology can come together. I would love to hear a little bit more about what we think the impact is going to be to workers with the deployment of more of these generative models. Clearly, the future of work is going to shift as a result, and especially in places like public sector or the media. I would love your perspective on how you think that will change with these new innovations.
Okay, so if we will talk about generative AI models, so just to give you a better context, that any model that can generate text, code, image, but all of these model has been trained by our data, so it will generate our thoughts, but in a different context. So it will not be creative as much as us because it's trained using our creativity. And there is a limitation until now. For example, in these chatbots, there is still misinformation, misleading. But you can use, for example, these generative AI model for drug discovery. What is the next diagnosis that we can implement? A chemical protein structure based on these large language model. So in the media, if you talk, for example, in the media, if you are, for example, editor, now, for example, you can use these to just generate a summary for our panel. So no need for you to write everything. The AI model, it will write for you the script, the action. So you can give a better, for example, time for yourself for creativity, for your critical thing is not to do the daily routine thing that we are used to do. So it will not replace, it is not a job displacement for the human, but it will create a new pathways, how we can, as a human, upskill our skills, and always how we can adapt. And this is part of our nature, because as a human, we always adapt. When, for example, they invented the calculator, people, they say, okay, we are banned to use the calculator in the school because it will affect our children's minds. We are now the children for that 20 years ago. Nothing happened to us. In fact, we invented AI machine algorithms. So when ChatGPT or all of these generative AI model will come, it will not replace us. It will direct us to better future. We'll use our thinking for a better way of generating better life for society. But the most important factor, just to stay with the context of this panel, is AI for good. So how we can implement these algorithms, these technology advancement in different sector for a better future. This is the most important thing, that it will keep us as a human to use this technology, not only use it for sustainability, but also develop sustainable solution, because there is no need for you to waste your time inventing a technology that maybe we will not be able to serve it for the people because of the energy consumption, because of its carbon footprint on the earth, because of the limitation of the cost that it will associate with these generative AI model. So from AI industry perspective, policy makers, industry, and experts, we have to sit together and discuss how we can address all of these challenges that we are having today for having a better future, whether using generative AI model or autonomous robotics or any advanced technology in the sector.
So what I think I'm hearing is it will allow us to lean into the things that humans do uniquely well: innovation, creativity, and really being able to demonstrate our subject matter expertise while maybe taking off some of the burden of the very administrative, repetitive, and taxing kinds of lookup activities. I saw that in working with human trafficking detectives, was so much of their time was just looking through images. But when you can do nearest neighbor searches and put the images in order of likeliest match, you could cut hours and hours and hours of their day that was just very tactical in nature and didn't get to the front lines of rescuing survivors quicker. So I think that's a great example. But I love how you picked up on the energy and the sustainability. Bryn, I would love to hear your perspective, since that's an area that you've doubled down in.
Yeah, I think every city around the world that we're speaking with about autonomous transport is looking for sort of safe, sustainable, affordable, accessible mobility. You know, that's the key driver that they have. That's one of the SDG targets, 11.2, and that's what we're moving towards. That doesn't mean just replacing bus drivers with software. It means changing the way mobility works in the city to benefit more people within the city. And there's driver shortages that we're currently experiencing, but the trend that we've noticed is that the mobility systems at the moment are designed around the human driver, the cost of the human driver, and balancing that against the load that they're carrying, the number of people or the amount of goods. And then it's also balanced by the hours that those people can work. Yeah, and there's limitations that are set around that. When you remove those human aspects to the mobility system, you can completely transform mobility. You can move to smaller mobility solutions that can access more of the city more regularly and at a lower cost. And that's really what the power of AI and autonomy is about, transforming mobility within those environments. That's what we're working towards.
So it allows you to begin with the end in mind and to impact the benefit to the most humans, not just looking at the cost reduction of people doing work.
Yeah, and then I think in the context of AI for Good and the work that we started with the ITU back in 2019 was really to be honest with where we are on the journey as well in AI. So I mentioned, goal 3.6, which is looking at 50% reduction in road fatalities. So I think it's like 1.35 million fatalities around the world due to road traffic accidents. It's the largest cause of fatalities for young children around the world, more than any other disease. Addressing that is really important. The challenge is that 93% of those fatalities are occurring in low and middle income countries. So it isn't just about the technology, it's about how do you make that technology penetrate into the areas where it's going to have most benefit. And I think, as Fred was saying, when you look at the 2030 timescales, it's really difficult to say that AI mobility, automated mobility will have that level of impact. But as you push out towards 2040, 2050, then it will become really transformational. And that's the bit that we're working towards at the moment.
I think we have a shared passion for the trauma prevention business versus the trauma cleanup business. So that's really inspiring to think about how many families will have less to process as a result of human error. LJ, I would love your perspective on this, because as creatives, I just think, where does IP go? How do people start to think about themselves as creators when the machines are involved? I would love your perspective in leading that.
Thank you. I think there's a really interesting aspect to when you automate something. Let's take driving, for example. What we're not talking about is the social interaction that people would have with, say, a bus driver. For many older people, that might be their only chance to speak to a person. So if we consider the entire ecosystem instead of just one problem that needs to be solved, I think that's why it's so important to have a diverse group of thinkers involved in AI. And you can see this as an example in creativity. All of the music generation that we can see doesn't have a complete library, in my opinion. There's not really music from the African subcontinent, from the Indian, from anywhere that's sort of outside of a specific Western theory music scale. So the music that the AI is going to spit out is going to be pretty similar to the music that's gone in. But it's the same. If you train an AI just on Mozart, it's going to kind of spit out Mozart. But Mozart was obsessed with Haydn. He actually thought of Haydn as his dad. And so what you'd need to do with a Mozart AI is program it with Haydn as well, and with all the other influences. But it takes a musician to come up with that, not just somebody who is purely into creating algorithms. And so the more inclusive we can be, the more likely we'll come up with a solution that is for everyone, that is for good.
Fred, my next question is for you, and I believe that having a purview over the overall area makes you uniquely qualified to answer this. What do you think are the bottlenecks that are holding us back from being able to see the promise of AI for good to deliver to those goals that you mentioned earlier? Where are the places where we can apply innovation to start accelerating some of the benefit?
Yeah, thank you, and a great question. So I think the main challenge is scale, right? So the solutions are there, but if you have a promising AI for health app, let's say that can detect skin tumors, right? Using your phone, your camera, but then you say, oh, sorry, doesn't work on dark skin, can't use it on the African continent. And then if you go beyond there, there's all types of problems like social problems, economic, political, technical, environmental. So one of the things we try to do at AI for Good is connect what we call AI innovators with problem owners and create a common framework of understanding so they can actually speak the same language when it comes to working together and finding solutions. And the context is super important, because what works in one part of the world doesn't work in another part of the world. But also you can't just expect Silicon Valley to provide solutions for the rest of the world. These solutions also have to be homegrown and have inputs from local areas, and that's where that connection mechanism is super important. And also on top of that, I would say also data. I mean, saying like data is the fuel of AI. And I can't count the number of meetings where I've been in a meeting and everyone's talking about the next great solution. Everyone says, oh great, who has data? Everyone puts their arm up. I have data. Who's willing to share data? Everyone's looking at their shoes. And this happens over and over again. So how can you actually create a way of sharing data? And there's a lot of data out there. There's public data sets, there's sets that are available but maybe under certain conditions or under license or peer-to-peer, but it's just not discoverable. So you just don't know what's out there. So I think one of the biggest bottlenecks is how can you make data discoverable, under what conditions, is it labeled, not labeled, is it licensed, not licensed, free to use? And it doesn't mean everyone has to give their data to everyone. I mean, but it's just at least the starting point would be, how can we share and under what conditions? And that doesn't exist yet. But I do understand the concerns. I mean, data is valuable, right? If you, for many companies, that's their goal. So another issue is how can you actually share data in a way where you can manipulate it and do calculations and get the right answer, but without sharing the actual data. And there are techniques for that. For example, like homomorphic encryption. I mean, a very simplified example would be, let's say there's an app that could determine my lifespan, but I don't want to give my personal details. So I would say I'm 10 feet tall, 20 pounds, green eyes, and I'm 5 years old. But it would calculate the whatever it's calculating, give me the right answer without actually knowing my real biometrics, if you will. And that's one technique of many data preserving techniques. And now I'm sure many of the companies downstairs have sort of commercial solutions where you can overlay data sets to do calculations without ever exchanging the data. So that's a good step forward. And also the last piece of the puzzle is basically connectivity. So if data is the oil of AI, I mean, we just reached a point where about 2/3 of the world is connected, but that's still a lot of people that are unconnected. And it's not that we need to connect them so we can sell more data packets. That's not the goal. In fact, a lot of areas have really good coverage, but people are not connected because there's no incentive to connect. So, there's something like 5,000 to 7,000 different languages and dialects. If you don't have content in your local dialect, you're not going to connect, right? Or literacy, So there's a lot of tools like speech-to-text, text-to-speech, maybe text-to-video, translation, interpretation, basically using AI to create incentives to participate online. And then it's not connectivity for the sake of connectivity, it's connectivity for the sake of participation. And what I mean by that is if, basically right now we're like a V8 engine that's only firing on 4 cylinders, and we're not benefiting from the collective problem-solving power, the collective art, the storytelling, the creativity of almost half the planet. So that's also probably one of the biggest bottlenecks, is basically connectivity, then the data sharing, and then of course the context, like, connecting people in a way so they can do problem solving together, where they can actually have a meaningful conversation and develop solutions together.
Lisa, I was going to say, well, in terms of the cities that we're speaking to, particularly in Europe, we're seeing a similar type of problem. So I spoke about autonomy. So autonomy is one part of the puzzle. Actually, what Europe is pushing in for is cooperative, connected, automated mobility. And that's the way at city scale you can manage all of the mobility solutions for the benefit of society. What we tend to see in the autonomy industry is like a siloed, we focus only on autonomy. Not only is the data set we use to train our algorithms private, but we won't share with you what we're seeing in your city. We won't tell you where we're seeing other objects. And that prevents you from having this cooperative aspect to mobility, which European regulation is pushing for. So the next 10 years is going to be really interesting focusing around this sort of data connectivity-driven sort of sharing of data?
Yeah, I lead the confidential computing focus for launch consulting, and one of the places we're seeing this very interesting trend is in how healthcare is evolving. And how do you use techniques like federated learning or bringing the models to the data versus merging everyone's data back due to obvious cybersecurity risks and very regulated industries. Doctor, I know that you do a lot of solutions in the healthcare space. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what you're seeing in bottlenecks in regulated industries in terms of being able to address and be more fast to market in clinical settings?
Okay, so the first thing when you for example, whether it's healthcare or automotive or robotics industry or even oil and gas or energy, I think people before they said, okay, let's implement AI technology in different vertical in the industry, but no one knows where we stand today. Until maybe 3 weeks or not 3 weeks, like let's say last November, when ChatGPT, for example, arrived, people understand, or I will not say industry leaders understand the effect of these generative AI models, whether it will be developed for healthcare or education system, and how it will impact the human. Imagine, within 5 days only, there is 1 million users. Within 5, it beats Instagram and all of these applications. And what it tells you that we are, as a human, we need this technology to use it. It will enable us to better concentrate on different things. Now, what is the limitation of any AI technology, whether it's generative AI models, is the data limitation. For healthcare, for example, if we'll talk about healthcare, there is limitation of the data because when you want to deliver an absolute robust AI model, you have to have the massive amount of data to be trained. For example, Fred, he mentioned that if I want to develop an AI technology that it will detect the cancer tumor, but you have different data sets. Depends on your origin, depends on even not only on your origin, maybe if you are in the same country, we are in the same skin, but different ages. There is lack of these data. So how we can use, for example, AI to generate maybe synthetic data, it will help us, for example, to provide a solution that we will test it first, of course. Now, there is a lack for standardization for the AI technology. There is a lack around the globe in AI regulation. I think it is the time to create a global platform. A global platform that all of the global leaders, they will set, whether industry, scientists, experts, anyone who wants to upskill and embed this AI technology in their industries for a better humanity, we have to sit on round table and discuss what is the limitation, what you can do it as a person, whether you are an AI researcher, whether you are a scientist, whether you are an AI industry leader, whether you are working on AI for good, or, for example, a leader in the government, how we can regulate all of these things, and what each country will take part, what data we can share. If, for example, if we are talking about healthcare, of course, we need to concentrate on one thing, on one solution. Now, it is the people will at the end, and who will participate on that round table to say, okay, let's do this or not. We can talk, we can give you opinion, but whether it will come or not, we deliver as everyone in his institute, I believe, whether you are an entrepreneur or you are working on a company, you try your best to drive a solution that it will upscale the humanity life. Now, how this will be implemented, whether we have a data limitation or not, we can't anticipate the future, but I believe that we are in the right track. We know what are the challenges, and we are working on the solutions.
Thank you so much. This will be our final question for the panel before we open it up to the audience. And so I would love to hear from each of our panelists. The one thing that you would like to see people in the audience today take away as a result of this conversation, if you had a magic wand, what would be the action or the information you would like the audience to take away from today?
Maybe two things. Well, one thing I'd say, get involved with AI for good. There's a lot of things we're doing. It's a global, open, free platform. Anyone can participate. We have pre-standardization efforts, global initiatives. We have data machine learning challenges. We have startup pitching competitions, art competitions, and we're just waiting for you. So that's my shameless plug. The second thing I would say, to capitalize on the timing right now. So up until about 5 years ago, I'd be at a dinner party and people would say, "Oh, Fred, what do you do for a living?" And I try to explain, and it, sort of blank stare. We're like, well, okay. But now, with ChatGPT, everyone, I say, "Oh, I work for AI for Good." "Oh, ChatGPT," and like all of a sudden, it's really captured the public's imagination. And I would say, you as probably not the normal layman, walking in the street, use that opportunity to basically tell people to experiment, get their hands dirty, get their feet wet, learn how to use these tools. They don't have to be perfect. They can maybe, help improve, make a little bit better. But, to try and at least encouraging people to try these tools, also explain a bit to them all the things we just talked about today. So I think there's still a big awareness problem among the general public, but it starts here. So I would say use the timing. The timing is hot now to spread the good word, and counting on you for that. Thanks.
Thank you. LJ?
How many of you currently work in AI in some sector? Can I just see? Okay, brilliant. And how many of you play a musical instrument or once played a musical instrument? Okay. I think my one thing is for you to have the confidence to try something that you don't currently know, like just mess around with a program, or pick up your instrument again. Because the amount of people I speak to who say, "Oh yes, I used to learn instrument X, but I don't really play it anymore," those neural pathways could be the clue to solving problems outside of that kind of environment. So my one thing would be, get creative, because it's good for you.
And society. Bryn?
So I think focus for me is on explainability, and explainability in every domain. So it's actually trying to look at regulation from a horizontal perspective, because actually what we'll find is that society will lump together all of AI. And so if there's a problem with AI in healthcare of a particular type, it might transfer over to trust in healthcare, in autonomy, AI used for mobility. And I think that's something that the governments are starting to recognise, but I think it's really important at this stage that we focus on the explainability aspects. And by that, I don't just mean inside the model, I mean the outcomes. So in terms of driving, that's really how do you explain the behaviour your vehicle exhibited on the road. And in the case of a collision, that would be how do you explain how that collision occurred, and how can you actually go back and validate that your software changes that you've made mean that that problem won't happen again. That level of explainability in models is going to be essential for building public trust across all sectors.
It's persuading people that openness is the way forward. If you look at how pilots have to report errors in aviation.
And I think that's the recognition that there will be failures, but you have to be able to explain those failures. That's where the trust comes from. The moment it's a black box model, and it's like, yeah, it went wrong, sorry, statistically that shouldn't have happened, but we don't know why, that's where the trust gets eroded. Yeah, and it's really about explainability is the key thing. So.
We have to step back from that slippery slope model and create safe spaces for people to fail, because that's where innovation lives, is learning as an organization. I would love your perspective on what action you would like to see.
Okay, so thank you all for adding all of these important aspects. Maybe I will add one final one is, despite your role in the community, whether you are working on healthcare, in government, in AI sector, in technology, or maybe in the home, using this technology is very crucial. And how we use it is very important, because the way how we use it, it will define and shape our future. So how we can be frontier in the AI technology and the advancement of these technology, but at the same time considering ethical AI, privacy, trust, building trust between the AI industry and the society is very important factor, and how we can ensure that we deliver these aspects for better sustainability solutions, for better humanity, for better also healthcare for us as a human.
Yeah, and I think my last comment would be, if you have an area of expertise, please be aware that AI is a tool, not a solution. So the humans are very critical in terms of understanding the workflow and the places where they can be accelerated to have better impact in their communities, at their companies, and their societies. So there's a place for everyone in this technology shift. And we really need everybody at the table getting comfortable with how we do things in a new way. Thank you so much for being here today. Any closing words from our panelists?
Yeah, just one quick thing actually, which is that a lot of technological progress has actually come from play, from music, things like frequency hopping and so many other things. And so, yes, it's not frivolous, it's actually for good for everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.